The story begins with our main character, Tae-Ho, who is seen traveling to a place called Maju. He arrives there to look for a room, and the owner shows him a basic room because Tae-Ho doesn't have much money. The owner inquires about Tae-Ho's parents, and Tae-Ho explains that his parents have passed away, adding that Maju is his mother's hometown. As they speak, a car passes by with a boy named In-Ha inside, who is also one of the main characters of the story. The owner explains that In-Ha is the third son of the Kango Group and mentions that he is an illegitimate child. Next, the story moves to a grand mansion where a party is in full swing. Here, In-Ju, the eldest son of the Kango Group, is seen enjoying the party. In-Ha, however, is absent because he isn't allowed to attend such gatherings, so he stays inside, unhappy seeing people partying and enjoying themselves through his room window. A little distance away, Tae-Ho is also watching the party, and then he notices In-Ha standing alone in his room. The following day, Tae-Ho goes to a convenience store to look for a job, but the owner tells him that they don't hire high school students. At that moment, Tae-Ho notices In-Ha stealing items from the store and putting them in his pocket. The owner also sees this but says nothing to him. After leaving, Tae-Ho goes to a restaurant, where he finally gets a job. As he steps outside, he notices In-Ha again, this time stealing an apple from a fruit vendor. Later, In-Ha approaches Tae-Ho and mentions that if Tae-Ho had seen him stealing, he should have complained about it. However, Tae-Ho suggests that if In-Ha wants attention, next time, he should do something bigger, as the small thefts aren't going to get him the attention he's looking for. In-Ha responds that people see what he does but choose not to say anything, pretending not to notice him. Then Tae-Ho counters by saying that no one is pretending. To everyone else, In-Ha is invisible. Hearing this, In-Ha is taken aback by Tae-Ho's bluntness. Tae-Ho's words deeply affect him, and he becomes very angry. The scene then shifts to a classroom where Tae-Ho enters, and In-Ha is already present. The teacher introduces Tae-Ho and praises him for his excellent academic performance and top score in the nationwide mock test. Later, when Tae-Ho goes to the canteen for lunch, In-Ha prevents him from sitting down. Tae-Ho quietly moves to another seat without saying anything, but In-Ha continues to bother him, telling Tae-Ho that he dislikes him. Even then, Tae-Ho remains silent. However, In-Ha takes it too far and throws his plate of food at Tae-Ho. Tae-Ho, now furious, throws his own food back at In-Ha, and the two begin to fight. In-Ha is skilled in boxing and beats Tae-Ho badly until a teacher intervenes, so they both end up in the teacher's room writing an apology letter. After that, In-Ha arrives home, and the party atmosphere continues outside his house. In-Ha's older brother is seen enjoying himself, going so far as to shoot near a man just for fun, demonstrating that these people would go to any extent for their amusement. On the other hand, when Tae-Ho leaves the classroom, he receives a phone call that shakes him. Immediately, he runs to a temple where his mother is present. He urges her to leave the place. In a flashback, it is revealed that Tae-Ho's father had called him earlier, insisting that he didn't kill his mom and that she was still alive. He threatens that just because he is in jail, it doesn't mean she can live in peace. The father claims that he has sent his men after her. This is why Tae-Ho urges his mom to leave the temple. He boards her on a bus and sends her away. Returning to the present, Tae-Ho goes to a fighting club, hoping to learn boxing. There, In-Ha shows up and asks if Tae-Ho wants to learn how to fight. To this, Tae-Ho shows a desire to kill someone. So, In-Ha offers to teach him to fight, but only if Tae-Ho can beat him. After that, they step into the ring, but In-Ha's superior skills make it easy for him to overpower Tae-Ho. Tae-Ho, at that moment, envisions In-Ha as his father, mocking him. He recalls the times his father abused him and his mother. Fueled by these memories, Tae-Ho starts desperately fighting back against In-Ha. Afterwards, In-Ha offers to drive Tae-Ho home and asks if they can be friends, but Tae-Ho remains silent. The next day, a boy tells In-Ha that Tae-Ho's father killed his mother and that Tae-Ho was the son of a murderer. In-Ha becomes angry hearing this and confronts the boy, questioning why it should matter to him what someone else did. In-Ha even accuses him of likely talking behind his back as well. Later, when Tae-Ho is on the terrace, In-Ha comes there too. Tae-Ho asks him if he doesn't want to know if what others are saying about his family is true or not. He then reveals that the murderer isn't his biological father and that everything happened due to domestic violence. Currently, his dad is in jail and has been sentenced to death. Then Tae-Ho suggests that they should become friends, but In-Ha asks if Tae-Ho was doing him a favor because he refused the friendship the previous night. At this, Tae-Ho proposes that instead of being friends, they should become partners, explaining that if In-Ha helps him, he will give him what he has always wanted. Hearing this, In-Ha inquires if it would be possible for him to go to Hakak University with Tae-Ho. Tae-Ho expresses his willingness to help In-Ha but emphasizes that they need to decide what they will do and how they will do it. The story then moves forward a few years, where Tae-Ho is tutoring kids and also doing other part-time jobs. One morning, when Tae-Ho comes out of his bathroom, In-Ha brings him a cake because it's Tae-Ho's birthday. This indicates that they have become good friends now. Then, Tae-Ho gives him a pen drive containing reports from an industrial organization and this week's lecture notes everything everything that was important for In-Ha. In return, In-Ha was doing a lot for Tae-Ho as well. He tells Tae-Ho that he has made a recommendation for him, assuring him that he will get a good job. In the next scene, Tae-Ho meets his professor, who compliments him on his report. The professor mentions that the report highlighted the future strategies of the Kango Group. He expresses his interest in buying the report and asks how much money Tae-Ho wants in return. Tae-Ho replies that he doesn't want money. He wants to build his future and requests that his name be put on the report. As Tae-Ho leaves, the professor calls Song-ju, the second son of the Kango Group, and tells him that he has found what Song-ju was looking for and suggests that this could be the new era of the Kango Group and could change his fortune. Then Tae-Ho is seen reading the news about the Kango Group on the internet. It was mentioned that one of In-Ha's two brothers was going to become the director of future strategy. There is a girl named Hae-won looking at Tae-Ho at that time. She studies at Tae-Ho's university. Though the girl is also Tae-Ho's neighbor, he pretends that they don't know each other. She points out that they are neighbors and in the same department, which should be enough for them to know each other. But Tae-Ho says nothing. Then, In-Ha arrives and notices Tae-Ho looking at Hae-won. He asks Tae-Ho if he likes her, but Tae-Ho says nothing again. In the next scene, Tae-Ho is at In-Ha's house, where his whole family lives. He was there to tutor In-Ha's younger sister, Hui-ju, on In-Ha's recommendation. Tae-Ho tries to teach her carefully, but Hui-ju isn't focused on studying and keeps asking irrelevant questions. She mentions that she heard Tae-Ho was In-Ha's friend. However, Tae-Ho doesn't respond and just tries to teach her. Tae-Ho says that if she is testing his patience, she won't beat him because patience is something no one can buy. Soon, a man named Mr. Moon, who manages the Kango Group dealings, calls Tae-Ho and asks him to sign an agreement. Mr. Moon pays Tae-Ho in advance for the tutoring job. When Tae-Ho comes out, In-Ha waits for him and asks about his dad, but Tae-Ho mentions that he hasn't seen In-Ha's dad. He only met his sister. Tae-Ho continues, stating that he understands In-Ha wants to meet his family and misses them a lot. In-Ha replies that he'd have to meet them in order to miss them, but he hasn't met them for years. Then Tae-Ho points out that In-Ha is in touch with his sister. In-Ha agrees because Hui-ju is very different and is more like his real sister. Later, as Tae-Ho returns home, he notices a woman at Hae-won's house, who turns out to be Hae-won's mother. She forces Hae-won to open the door, but when Hae-won refuses, so her mother breaks the glass door. She remarks that everything Hae-won receives is because of her, as she brought her into this world, and therefore, all the money Hae-won earns should be given to her. Shortly after, when Hae-won is on the road and it starts raining, Tae-Ho brings her an umbrella. They go to a store and drink beer together, sharing their life stories with each other. The following morning, In-Ha's dad is consulting with his attorney about his two older sons, In-ju and Song-ju. He is trying to decide which of them should get into the company in the future. However, he is not satisfied with either of them. On the other side, Song-ju's mom, who is actually In-ju's stepmother and the mother of only Song-ju and Hui-ju, wants the entire Kango company to go to her son Song-ju, so she intends to remove In-Ha from her path first. In a flashback, it is shown that Song-ju's mom visited In-Ha and asked him to sign a contract, assuring him that his lifestyle will remain the same and he will continue receiving financial support. At that moment, In-Ha recalls what Tae-Ho told him earlier, that his stepmom would surely call him and try to remove him from her path so that everything could go to Song-ju. Tae-Ho questions what In-Ha would do if he had to give up his shares. In-Ha replies that even if he has to give up his shares to get inside the company, it wouldn't matter to him. Remembering this, In-Ha decides to sign the contract. In the next scene, In-Ha is at a convenience store when he sees Hae-won and invites her for a drink with him and Tae-Ho. The three of them then go to a place and start drinking. There, In-Ha asks Hae-won if she has any friends, to which Hae-won replies that In-Ha can be her friend. However, In-Ha expresses that he doesn't just want to be friends, he wants to be her boyfriend. He then asks her out on a date, but Hae-won responds that she is very busy and finds his actions uncomfortable. Later, In-Ha tells Tae-Ho that it isn't easy to convince Hae-won to go on a date. At this, Tae-Ho points out that Hae-won was uncomfortable with In-Ha. So why is he persisting? In-Ha replies that he is just trying to be sincere. Then Tae-Ho and Hae-won head towards their homes, and Hae-won messages Tae-Ho, suggesting that they should have a round of beers again, so they meet again at the terrace. There, Hae-won asks Tae-Ho if there is any specific reason why he hangs out with In-Ha. She continues by stating that In-Ha is the illegitimate heir of the Kango Group, comparing him to a golden rope. Meanwhile, In-Ha is seen near Tae-Ho's house, wondering to himself why Tae-Ho hadn't mentioned that Hae-won lives across from his house. Then, Hae-won asks Tae-Ho if he would help her, but Tae-Ho replies that he can't help her. Hae-won tells him that even if he doesn't want to help her now, he will have to help her in the end. When Tae-Ho gets home, he finds In-Ha sitting there. In-Ha asks Tae-Ho where he has been all this time, but Tae-Ho remains silent. In-Ha then tells Tae-Ho that he is going to stay with him that night. In the next scene, Tae-Ho's entire family is present at the dining table. In-Ha's younger sister asks if she can invite In-Ha to dinner on Saturday. Upon hearing this, In-Ju becomes upset and questions why In-Ha needs to be invited there. Hui-Ju replies that In-Ha is also part of their family, but In-Ju retorts by asking who told her that In-Ha is part of their family. This angers Hui-Ju, and she repeatedly tells her father that they should invite In-Ha for dinner. In the next scene, the mother, Ji-Suk, advises the father, Jung-Mo, not to pay attention to Hui-Ju, who keeps talking like that. But Jung-Mo responds by saying that whatever happens, In-Ha is their son, and if he comes home once, it's not a big deal. He adds that there is no reason why In-Ha can't come and that he doesn't need Ji-Suk's permission to invite In-Ha. Ji-Suk reminds Jung-Mo of the promise he made to her, but Jung-Mo counters by saying that he did everything she asked and is aware of the inheritance waiver. He then calls In-Ha, which infuriates Ji-Suk, and invites In-Ha to dinner on Saturday. Shortly after, Ji-Suk gives Jung-Mo the same inheritance waiver that she had asked In-Ha to sign, which stated that In-Ha would give up all his shares. On the other hand, In-Ha is surprised and also happy that his own father invited him. In-Ha tells Tae-Ho about the invitation, and Tae-Ho admits that he knew they would call but didn't think it would happen so soon. Tae-Ho tells In-Ha that his father is a very cold-hearted person and explains that using Ji-Suk, his father has planned to get the inheritance waiver from him before the succession is complete. Tae-Ho warns In-Ha that for now, they may act friendly towards him, but he needs to be innocent yet not naive. In the following scene, Jung-Mo shows the same inheritance waiver to his attorney and cautions him that if any news about this leaks in the public, he will ensure to punish the person responsible for it. Jung-Mo then instructs him to keep the waiver safe, as it might be needed any time. Next, In-Ha's second brother, Song-Ju, visits Tae-Ho's professor. The professor shows Song-Ju the same report Tae-Ho had prepared. After reading it, Song-Ju is pleased. The professor tells him that the report is a weapon that could make him the owner of the Kango Group. Song-Ju thanked the professor and promised to make him the director of the Kango Group in return. Later, In-Ha meets Hui-Ju at a restaurant, who reveals that she was the one who asked their father to invite him. There, Hui-Ju sketches Tae-Ho and says that she has developed feelings for him. Meanwhile, Hai-Won, who works at the same restaurant, surprises In-Ha by appearing there. In-Ha asks Hai-Won if she works there, and Hui-Ju asks Hai-Won if she knows In-Ha, which means she must also know Tae-Ho. Hai-Won replies that Tae-Ho is her friend, which annoys Hui-Ju. Shortly afterwards, In-Ha approaches Hai-Won to ask her on a date, but Hai-Won declines, saying that she doesn't trust people so easily. The scene shifts to Saturday dinner when In-Ha arrives at his home, but In-Ju starts insulting him. Despite hearing this, In-Ha keeps his cool and speaks politely. Hui-Ju comes outside and advises In-Ha not to pay attention to what In-Ju says. As the argument escalates, In-Ju repeatedly flicks Hui-Ju on the head. Hui-Ju becomes so angry that she bites In-Ju's hand. In the meantime, Ji-Suk comes there and blames In-Ha for the chaos, saying that he shouldn't have come there. So, In-Ha leaves the house immediately. All of this reaches Jung-Mo in no time through Mr. Moon. After some time, Tae-Ho meets In-Ha and advises him not to let little things get to him, as bigger humiliations and insults are waiting for him. Tae-Ho reassures In-Ha that he will make him perfect and that everything is happening just as they expected. He informs In-Ha that Song-Ju came to meet his professor, and they are setting up the Prosperity Center soon. Later, everyone is gathered for dinner, but In-Ha's absence upsets Hui-Ju. She questions why no one cares that In-Ha left the house. She becomes angry and accuses everyone of being cold-hearted, declaring that she didn't know they were psychopaths before storming off. After that, Jung-Mo confronts In-Ju, questioning how he dared to behave this way and disrespect him in his own home. He reminds In-Ju that he invited In-Ha, but In-Ju forced him to leave and that insulting him was a big mistake. On the other hand, Hui-Ju's mother slaps Hui-Ju for being rude at the table, saying she can't tolerate her behavior anymore. She then approaches Mr. Moon and asks what is wrong with Hui-Ju and why she keeps behaving like this. Mr. Moon reveals that Hui-Ju's new tutor is In-Ha's friend, which further irritates Ji-Suk. Just then, a servant informs them that Hui-Ju is nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Hui-Ju has run away from her house. Now, she is lost and scared, and she calls Tae-Ho for help. As Tae-Ho arrives, Hai-Won also shows up. Hui-Ju, who dislikes Hai-Won, tells her that Tae-Ho is her tutor and that if she wants to make friends, she should make In-Ha her friend. Just then, In-Ha arrives, which annoys Hui-Ju even more. During the conversation, Hui-Ju learns that Hai-Won is Tae-Ho's neighbor, Hui-Ju, who has been trying to keep Tae-Ho and Hai-Won apart. She remarks in disbelief that they see each other every day. After they leave, In-Ha tells Hui-Ju that she can't act like this, especially not with Tae-Ho, and warns her that if their mother finds out, she will fire him from the tutoring job. In the meantime, as Tae-Ho steps outside, he receives a message from Mr. Moon informing him that his contract is being terminated and he shouldn't come to teach Hui-ju anymore. In the next scene, Hui-ju learns that her mother has fired Tae-ho, which makes her furious. On her way to school, she suddenly gets out of the car and tells the driver to inform the school that she's unwell. She heads straight to Tae-ho's university and confronts him. She accuses him of not even saying goodbye to her. Also, Haewon is watching them from a distance. There, Hui-ju directly proposes to Tae-ho, telling him that she likes him, but Tae-ho reminds her that they are no longer teacher and student but rather employer and employee, and their contract has been terminated. He warns her not to test his patience, as she won't win. Although Hui-ju tries to act tough in front of Tae-ho, once in the car, she breaks down and starts crying. In the next scene, when Tae-ho is in the library, Hae approaches him and asks if he doesn't think he is being too harsh on Hui-ju. Tae-ho responds by saying that it's none of Haewon's business. Haewon argues that Tae-ho was being overly sensitive, but Tae-ho retorts that he doesn't need her advice. In-ha, who is also present and overhearing their conversation, wonders what Haewon is trying to achieve. Later, it is revealed that Haewon's mom works at a place where illegal betting occurs. She notices some people carrying boxes, and one of the boxes falls, revealing a lot of money inside. The sight of the money lures her, and she sneaks inside to steal it. The next day, gangsters arrive at Haewon's university and reveal that her mom has run away with their money, and they have come to collect it. Haewon denies having any mom, and the gangsters begin to threaten her. Haewon tells them that if they want their money back, they should either find the person who took it or file a complaint with the police. One of the gangsters slaps Haewon, and she slaps him back in response. He is about to hit her again when Tae-ho arrives with security guards, causing the gangsters to flee. Tae-ho then asks Haewon if she has another place to stay, as the gangsters might return to her house. Haewon responds negatively, stating that this isn't the first time something like this has happened to her, and she doesn't run from such situations. She emphasizes that running would mean considering her mom as family, which she doesn't want. Meanwhile, a guy informs In-ha that gangsters had come to collect money from Haewon, so In-ha tries calling Haewon, but she doesn't answer. He searches for her in the whole university and eventually finds her, embracing and kissing her. Tae-ho, who happens to be there, sees this and feels deeply hurt. Haewon notices Tae-ho as well. Later, when Tae-ho is on his way home, he sees Haewon carrying her luggage away. She informs him that she will be staying at In-ha's place for a while. Tae-ho tries to dissuade her, but Haewon argues that it wouldn't make a difference if she doesn't go since Tae-ho and Haewon mean nothing to each other. She explains that his behavior towards her makes everything clear. She adds that Tae-ho was unsure of everything, including whether he will regret his actions tomorrow. She has no hope left for Tae-ho now, so she walks away. In the next scene, when Tae-ho arrives home, Haewon is there again, knocking and calling him. Just then, Tae-ho receives a call from In-ha and answers it. He doesn't open the door for Haewon, so she walks away. The story then fast-forwards 5 years to the 5th anniversary of the Prosperity Cooperation Center, where everyone is waiting for the arrival of the Kango Group members. In-ha is also present there. At the same time, the chairman and his 2 brothers make an entrance, while In-ha stands like a regular employee. Upon reaching the meeting room, an employee arrives, and Tae-ho's former professor, who now works at the Kango Group, introduces the employee, stating that this person wrote the speech for Jung-moo that is about to be delivered. That person is revealed to be Tae-ho. He introduces himself as someone working for the Global Leader Training Team. As everyone begins to leave, the chairman asks Tae-ho to stay behind. Then, Jung-mo accuses Tae-ho of creating a false image of him in the speech, implying that he does not fit the ideal image of an owner. For this reason, Tae-ho is fired from the company. Tae-ho, however, asserts that Jung-mo will need him in the future. Jung-mo comments that he knows everything that happens in Kango, and he also knows Tae-ho has turned his innocent father into a murderer. He says that there is no job Tae-ho cannot do, but if he wishes to work with him, he must hide his emotions and true self. Later, at the center's anniversary, Jung-mo delivered a speech, stating that some people consider his company a monster harming the poor and weak. He adds that his company provides many opportunities, and only those who prove themselves will survive in the Kango Group. His speech is exactly what Tae-ho had written for him. In the next scene, Tae-ho informs In-ha that Song-ju wants to control the Kango Group's power through the center and aims to claim the entire group for himself. Later, Jung-mo calls Tae-ho to inform him that Tae-ho was now his assistant. In a flash forward to 5 years later, Jung-mo passes out in the swimming pool. When his family rushes to the hospital to visit him, they see that Jung-moo was alright and enjoying a meal there while Tae-ho was standing there. After some time, when they leave, In-ju remarks that looking at Tae-ho makes his neck hurt. In-ju's wife comments that Tae-ho was the youngest chief secretary to date, while Song-ju adds that Tae-ho hasn't caused any problems in the past 5 years, which pleases their father. However, In-ju expresses concern that Tae-ho was too close to their father, suggesting that if Tae-Ho tried anything, he could destroy them. In another scene, Tae-Ho meets with the chairman and informs him that the politician Sang-soo has assured him that the desired results will be achieved without issue. Jung-mo replied that as soon as Sang-soo became the party leader, they would work on his presidency. In a flashback to a year earlier, Jung-mo reveals plans to build a massive city on the west coast, much larger than Kango City, and for this, they need that politician as a leader. Meanwhile, Song-ju is seen with another political leader named Sang-dong. With the two shooting together, a camera set up at the location is hacked, and someone starts downloading the footage to send to Tae-Ho, indicating that this person is working for him. Tae-Ho later showed the videos to In-ha and Haewon, revealing that in 5 days, there would be a political party conference in which Sang-dong would oppose the chairman. This is exactly what Song-ju had planned. Tae-Ho explains that if Sang-dong becomes the leader, it could lead to an attack on the massive city project because the chairman wanted Sang-soo to lead the party. After that, the party conference takes place, and Sang-dong wins the leadership, which enrages Jung-mo. He asks how Sang-dong could have defeated Sang-soo, realizing that Sang-dong is plotting to destroy the Kango Group. Jung-mo orders Tae-Ho to find out who is behind all of this. Later, Haewon meets with Tae-Ho and warns him that if the chairman discovers he has prior knowledge of Sang-dong's victory, it could cause trouble for him. She also insists on distancing herself from the situation, as she no longer has any connection to the chairman. Tae-Ho then asks Haewon if she is going to marry In-ha, but she replies that she is not ready yet. In the next scene, Hui-ju is informed by In-ju's wife that her mother has arranged a marriage for her with a man named Hui-chan. Hui-ju gets furious and confronts her mother, asking how she could arrange a marriage with someone like Hui-chan, given his terrible reputation. Her mother replies that everyone in the family has been married this way, but Hui-ju argues that this is the reason for their misery. She threatens to take her own life if the arrangement continues, and then she calls Tae-Ho for help. On the other hand, at a hotel event with political members present, Haewon sets up a recorder and listens to their conversations. Later, she shares the information with Tae-Ho. She reveals that Song-ju is planning to use Sang-dong as a frontman to control the National Assembly and sabotage the chairman's massive city project. Tae-Ho understands that this is part of Song-ju's strategy to dismantle the chairman's empire from within. In the following scene, the hacker is seen providing Tae-Ho with photos and information about a Save Africa Foundation. This organization is named after Jeon Noik Foundation, which is actually run by chairman's wife, Ji-suk. She has been laundering the money in the name of donations to Africa, and Jung-moo doesn't even know about this. The attorney of Jung-moo, named Hyak-jin, is also involved with her. A flashback shows Hyak-jin visiting Song-ju, who tries to convince him to disclose details about Milton from 10 years prior. He offers Hyak-jin ownership of his global law firm in exchange. Hyak-jin, who was at first reluctant, upon hearing this, agrees. In the subsequent scene, while Song-ju sleeps, the hacker hacks into his phone and monitors his activities on a computer. There, he learns about the deal between Song-ju and Hyak-jin. After that, the hacker forwards the chat details to Tae-Ho. Then Tae-Ho informs Jung-moo about the deal and shows him a photo of Song-ju meeting with Hyak-jin, which upsets Jung-moo as he realizes Hyak-jin's betrayal. Soon after, Jung-moo calls a meeting, with Hyak-jin present, and announces the reassignment of the center of the Kango Group. He assigns them to look into the legal issues and solve them. Tae-Ho instructs everyone to ensure no data leaks from the meeting and collects all their phones. Hyak-jin, who is visibly agitated, demands his phone but is told by Tae-Ho to use a different one for urgent reasons. In the next scene, Song-ju informs Ji-suk that their father is trying to reclaim the center, which will now fall under the chairman's authority. They know that whoever possesses the center will rule the whole Kango Group. Ji-suk remarks that the time has come to demonstrate that the Kango Group does not belong to Jung-moo. A meeting then reveals that Kango Securities is in disarray, and Jung-moo assigns Song-ju to now manage it, which infuriates him. Jung-moo also announced that the Prosperity Center will be under the chairman's authority, indicating Song-ju's loss of control over it. The new director of this center will be Professor Dong Uk again. The scene shifts to the previous day when Tae-Ho visits Dong Uk, informing him that Song-ju has abandoned him and that Tae-Ho has come to reclaim Dong Uk. Back in the present, Song-ju is enraged over his loss of the center. The scene then shows numerous prosecution agents raiding the Kango Group's office. A man has informed prosecution agents of substantial information against Jung-moo. That's why they have come to seize everything at Kango's group office. On the other hand, Jung-moo is confronting Ji-suk. He accuses her of deceit and manipulation, but Ji-suk defends her actions, stating she did nothing wrong. Before Jung-moo can respond further, he suddenly collapses due to heart pain. Jung-moo struggles to breathe and get the medicine. Though Ji-suk can help him, she decides not to and leaves the office. Tae-Ho arrives shortly after, and he calls the emergency service. It is soon revealed that Jung-moo's heart condition is quite serious. In-ju, shocked by the news, questions why they were not informed earlier. noting that the two brothers were aware of the situation but failed to notify him. This leads to an argument between the brothers. Tae-Ho arrives and informs them that the doctor has prescribed complete bed rest for the chairman. In the following scene, In-Ha calls Tae-Ho to a meeting and questions whether he still deserves her trust or if their situation is about to end. Tae-Ho reassures him that everything remains under. At that moment, In-ju calls Tae-Ho, offering him a house and stating that he can move in immediately. Tae-Ho remarks that while the house is nice, it seems like In-ju has not done enough research on Tae-Ho. In-ju points out that Tae-Ho lives in a small house that isn't even his. Tae-Ho questions whether In-ju intends to acquire him if the chairman dies, but he says that the chairman is still alive and that he should have offered him something more substantial than the house. In-ju asks him to specify what he wants, to which Tae-Ho replies that if he gives him everything he has, then Tae-Ho would be willing to be his man. In-ju is surprised by the response and understands that Tae-Ho cannot be bought. In the following scene, In-ju calls his secretary upstairs and vents his frustration on the secretary, using the bat to hit him. He then instructs the secretary to follow Tae-Ho starting the next day. A short while later, Tae-Ho visits the chairman, who is now aware of his weakness in the form of his family members. Jun-Young also inquires about Tae-Ho's motives, noting that Tae-Ho has never asked for rewards before. Tae-Ho mentions that he will start asking for rewards from now on. After that, Tae-Ho inquired about how Jun-Young plans to punish Song-ju, but Jung-moo doesn't have a proper plan for his punishment, so Tae-Ho shows Jun-Young a photo of the prosecutor, revealing that he was once a police officer with no connections and is now desperate for a promotion. Tae-Ho suggests tipping this prosecutor about the illegal businesses of Sung-ju. Jun-Young agrees and instructs Tae-Ho to prepare the final part of his plan. Just then, Tae-Ho justifies the need for In-Ha as the missing piece of the puzzle. He is the chairman's third son. He explains that someone must be the scapegoat and that In-Ha is suited for this role, unlike Jung-mo's other two sons. Jung-Mo agrees but warns that In-Ha must not become greedy for the Kango Group. He orders Tae-Ho to draft a contract outlining all the rules. Elsewhere, with the chairman's absence, Chae Dong-uk is back in Sung-ju's circle, thinking that Tae-Ho was in a mess with the chairman on the hospital bed. When Tae-Ho counters him, Dong-uk says that he does not want to be anyone's subordinate and needs a genuine owner. Just then, he receives a call from Hae-won, who informs him that In-Ha is missing. Tae-Ho immediately deduces In-Ha's likely location. Meanwhile, In-Ha is seen on the beach, reflecting on a childhood memory of his mother. Tae-Ho arrives at In-Ha's location and informs him that the chairman is perfectly fine. In-Ha, upon hearing this, starts hitting Tae-Ho and accuses him of lying and not trusting him. He claims that Tae-Ho wants to handle everything himself. Tae-Ho defends himself by stating that he has risked everything for In-Ha. He wants him to become the chairman of the Kango Group and insists that he is solely there to support In-Ha. He urges In-Ha to come with him, as the chairman wants to meet him. On the other hand, Hui-ju finds her supposed fiancé in a fancy bar and declares that she won't be marrying him. Hui-ju then visits Tae-Ho and accuses him of never taking her seriously despite her efforts. Tae-Ho remains silent, prompting Hui-ju to hit his car with her sandals and threaten to tell her parents she wants to marry him. Tae-Ho agrees to the marriage but questions whether her parents will approve of it and how he will be treated. Hui-ju promises to protect him, but Tae-Ho responds that it is not her job to protect him, she must focus on protecting herself and surviving within the Kango family. In the next scene, Ji-Suk calls a meeting and announces that she will handle the chairman's duties in his absence. She admits to her limitations and proposes nominating Song-ju as the leader of Kango. Meanwhile, the hacker is working on his computer. He hacks the Kango Securities servers and creates mischief at Kango Securities by changing 1,001 per share as a dividend to 1,000 shares per person. This change creates a lot of fuss at the Kango Securities office and leads to Sung-ju being summoned by the prosecutor's office as excessive selling of shares is illegal. The share price of the holding also goes down. All the news channels are talking about this and Sung-ju is worried as he was in this company to make it prosper, but opposite is happening now. Later, in a meeting with the chairman, In-Ha puts a condition before signing the contract. The chairman has to recognize him as his third son and the member of the Kango Group. Chairman doesn't reply but asks him to sign the contract, which In-Ha does. This contract is about the plan which Tae-Ho devised for the chairman to get rid of all the people who could potentially betray him. After that, the chairman visits Ji-Suk in her garden and reveals that everything that had happened was a pre-planned. He warns her to be prepared for a punishment before leaving. Ji-Suk, knowing this, cries out in fear as she was not expecting chairman to get Heathia soon. Later, the chairman asks the home cooks to prepare a special meal for the dinner and In-Ha is finally invited to the Kang residence, much to Hui-ju's delight as opposed to the others. The next day, the chairman makes an official appearance in front of the media, posing as a patient who has recently recovered with In-Ha to support him. The media gets surprised when In-Ha calls the chairman as his father. In the next scene, the prosecutor who summoned Chairman Jung-moo to his office is shown. with In-ha and a lawyer also present. The lawyer states that Chairman Jung-moo was ready to admit all charges and that his defense is contained on a pen drive. A flashback reveals that Tae-ho had handed the pen drive to the lawyer, instructing him to give it to the prosecutor and that everything else would fall into place on its own. At present, the prosecutor questions Jung-moo, asking if he is attempting to bribe him, and that is also true in his office. In-ha urges the prosecutor to check the file first in the pen drive. Upon opening it, the prosecutor finds some photos along with a note accusing him of trying to buy connections. Frightened, he realizes the severity of the situation. Shortly afterwards, the district attorney ordered the prosecutor to halt all proceedings immediately against Chairman Jung-moo. After that, Jung-moo meets attorney Chu Hyuk-jin, who begins apologizing as soon as he sees Jung-moo. In the meantime, it is revealed that the prosecutor has been transferred. His chief had informed him that he would need to stay elsewhere for a year but promised to bring him back when the time was right. On the internet, it is revealed that In-ha is Chairman Jung-moo's third son, a fact that quickly goes viral, enraging both In-ju and Sung-ju. Sung-ju claims that the company belongs to him and vows to reclaim it at any cost. Back at the office, everyone learns that Tae-ho has become the division director and In-ha is now the chief manager. Dong-uk also finds out this and questions Tae-ho what will happen next. Tae-ho reassures him that he will remain in his current position. Tae-ho clarifies that he has never considered Dong-uk an enemy. Meanwhile, In-ju is furious about Tae-ho's promotion and takes his frustration out on his assistant. At that moment, In-ju receives a phone call. On the other side, Sung-ju learns that Ji-suk has left the house. He asks Mr. Moon why he didn't stop her, and Mr. Moon explains that Ji-suk had wanted to leave before the chairman's official announcement. Sung-ju then goes to meet Jung-moo, who informs him that he will not be removed from his position as CEO of Kango Securities. Jung-moo warns that if Sung-ju attempts to do more against the chairman, his position at Kango will be revoked, and even his mother won't be able to assist him. Meanwhile, Tae-ho then instructs his hacker to lie low, anticipating that Sung-ju will pursue them. There, the hacker reveals that he was once a top spy for the General Bureau, having manipulated the worldwide bank. He warns Tae-ho that in South Korea, nothing is guaranteed, and even if Sung-ju catches him, he won't know about Tae-ho's involvement. In the next scene, In-ha proposes to Hae-won by placing a ring on her finger and asking if the marriage conditions are satisfactory. Hae-won agrees, and they plan their wedding. In-ha messages Tae-ho to inform him of the wedding plans. Although In-ha and Hae-won are both happy, it appears that Tae-ho is not. Later, both In-ju and Sung-ju learn that In-ha would be leading Taekwon sales. Meanwhile, Tae-ho meets Hae-won on the rooftop alone and notices the ring on Hae-won's finger, the one In-ha had given her. They are then observed by a man taking photos of both of them secretly. In the following scene, Tae-ho then goes to meet In-ha, who mentions that the chairman had summoned him. As In-ha leaves, someone is shown watching Tae-ho playing basketball. That mysterious figure comes near and assaults Tae-ho by hitting on his head. In extreme pain and semi-conscious state, Tae-ho tries to call Hae-won because her memories are the only ones he is reminding at that time. But just as he makes the call, the man approaches him again and strikes him on the head one more time. Hae-won attempts to reach back to Tae-ho, but the man cuts off the call. She tries calling again, but Tae-ho doesn't answer. Later in his office, Jung-moo tells In-ha that he knows his method was wrong in reaching the Kango Group, but he also insists that it doesn't mean the results won't be good. Jung-moo offers In-ha a reward and asks him to state what he wants. In-ha replies that he wants to marry a girl, to which Jung-moo gives his consent, saying that he is ready to allow the marriage. Meanwhile, Hae-won reaches the hospital while searching for Tae-ho, who grabs Hae-won's hand and pleads with her not to leave, a phrase Hae-won recalls him saying before. Then, she attempts to contact In-ha, but he does not answer the phone. At that time, Jung-moo is telling In-ha that if he wants to remain his son, he should avoid making decisions on his own and instead follow Jung-moo's instructions. When In-ha answers Hae-won's call, he learns that Tae-ho has been attacked and is now in the hospital. So, In-ha instructs his attorney, who has connections with the police, to ensure that no investigation occurs about the attack on Tae-ho because the investigation would create significant problems for the Kango Group if the media were to get involved. At the hospital, Hae-won informs In-ha that Tae-ho lost a lot of blood and could have died if they hadn't reached the hospital sooner. In-ha tries to reassure her by stating that Tae-ho is strong and will come out healthier soon. Meanwhile, In-ju is happy after hearing about Tae-ho's condition, which angers Hui-ju. She is concerned about Tae-ho's health and goes to visit him. In-ju's wife reminds him that Hui-ju likes Tae-ho, which explains her concern. At the same time, Tae-ho regains consciousness with Hae-won by his side. Just then, Hui-ju arrives and questions Hae-won's presence, but Hae-won retorts that Hui-ju should first ask how Tae-ho is. Hui-ju demands an explanation for Hae-won's presence again, but In-Ha intervenes, saying that Haewon has the right to stay. Hui-ju recalls seeing Tae-ho holding Haewon's hand earlier. When she insists on staying, she tells In-Ha that she dislikes him because of Haewon and questions how long he plans to keep her around. In-Ha responds by revealing that he intends to marry Haewon, with his father's approval, and instructs Hui-ju to respect her from now on. In another scene, the politician Jae-Cheol informs Haewon about the attack on Tae-ho, suggesting that the Kango Group's attempts to cover it up seem suspicious. Jae-Cheol also reveals that In-Ha instructed the police not to file a report. Meanwhile, Tae-ho, now awake, asks about his attacker. In-Ha tells him that everyone agreed to forget about the incident and that there will be no investigation. Tae-ho objects, insisting that he should decide how his personal matters are handled. But In-Ha tells him the decision was made by the chairman and himself. Tae-ho argues that the incident wasn't just a simple assault, but In-Ha dismisses his concerns, explaining that what benefits Kango is good for him, too. He also informs Tae-ho that their father has agreed to his marriage with Haewon. After In-Ha leaves, Tae-ho sneaks out of the hospital and confronts Jung-moo, declaring that he will find out who attacked him, even if it goes against Jung-moo's wishes. Jung-moo, in turn, tells Tae-ho to proceed but warns him to be cautious. After Tae-ho leaves, Jung-moo orders someone to investigate the attack, instructing them to find the culprit before Tae-ho does. Despite his injuries, Tae-ho approaches the hacker and orders him to investigate the attack on him, providing details of the location. The hacker named Seon-won is shocked to see Tae-ho in such a condition but agrees to help. Meanwhile, Haewon confronts In-Ha about halting the police investigation. In-Ha explains that the decision was not for Tae-ho but to protect the Kango Group's image. He adds that if Tae-ho's father becomes involved, it will create significant problems. Haewon, exasperated, accuses In-Ha of not caring whether Tae-ho could have died and questions why he doesn't want to find out who was responsible. In-Ha responds by stating that Tae-ho is still alive. Haewon compares In-Ha's behavior to how someone would act if a pet dog were injured. In-Ha corrects her, explaining that Tae-ho was not a pet and that his father keeps blood-related people as his pets, implying Tae-ho is different and not as important. In the following scene, Haewon's mother confronts her, demanding money for a house. However, Haewon threatens to take her own life to escape her mother's demands. Meanwhile, Seon-won successfully hacked into Seoul's CCTV control center and identified In-ju's secretary as the attacker. He sends the footage to Tae-ho, who becomes enraged and vows to take action against In-ju. Later, In-ha brings Haewon to meet Jung-moo, who instructs them on how to set a wedding date. Then we see Tae-ho following In-ju's secretary into a club with a secret room where drugs are kept. When confronted, Tae-ho questioned why he assaulted him and if the incident was a warning. In-ju's secretary feigned ignorance about what Tae-ho was referring to. However, Tae-ho agrees that what happened was in the past but insists that In-ju should be informed that he won't forget the warning. Simultaneously, In-ju was also present in the same club. Later, Tae-ho meets with Haewon, telling her that he was wrong about her at that time when he told her that they meant nothing to each other. Tae-ho admits that he used to be clueless, but Haewon suggests that if he is about to confess now, she insists that everything is over. Tae-ho disagrees, saying nothing is over for him and that, despite thinking he might die, Haewon is with him. As everything seems to vanish, Tae-ho suddenly kisses her. Haewon reacts by calling him crazy and questioning his intentions, but Tae-ho expresses that he wants this moment. They share a kiss again while In-ju's secretary discreetly takes photos of them. When these photos are shown to In-ju, he remarks that it is exactly what he wanted. The following day, as soon as Tae-ho arrives at the office, he receives a message advising him to review a document containing information about In-ju. Upon opening it, Tae-ho finds details about In-ju's suspicious future investments. Next, a scene shows Haewon and In-ha getting married, with Tae-ho attending their reception. During the event, Haewon texts In-ha to spend time with his father as she goes upstairs. At that moment, the elevator opens to reveal In-ju inside, who invites Haewon to get in. When she refuses, In-ju presents the photos of her and Tae-ho kissing. Seeing these photos, Haewon becomes frightened. Meanwhile, Tae-ho is trying to understand the deal with In-ju since he plans to get revenge for the attack. In-ju might be involved with a drug network. Meanwhile, In-ju makes Tae-ho come to him by portraying Haewon as bait. When Tae-ho reaches the place, In-ju blackmails Tae-ho, showing him the pictures of a kiss between him and Haewon. Tae-ho counterattacks with the knowledge of In-ju's embezzlement and drug network. However, In-ju doesn't budge and threatens to destroy Haewon's life with these pictures. Tae-ho's weakness, that is, Haewon, overpowers his good judgment, and he kneels to In-ju. Elsewhere, the chairman finds out about Ju's secretary Imo Jae-jin, who attacked Tae-ho. Shu Hyuk-jin informs the chairman that Mo Jae-jin is a team leader of Kango Securities on paper but really works for In-ju. Back at In-ju's, everything is a blur. In-ju seems to be forcing drugs upon Tae-ho at night. The next day, Tae-ho wakes up as a murder suspect with In-ju dead. He has the murder weapon in his hands and also the blood stains all over his clothes. Everyone in the Kang family is shocked by hearing this news. The hacker, Seo-won, clears up any evidence that might get him in trouble now that Tae-ho has been arrested as the prime suspect. Meanwhile, Haewon requests In-ha to help Tae-ho out of this trouble. In-ha ensures her that he will return with Tae-ho and then goes to the chairman, taking his opinion about the matter. The chairman is also worried about the situation as Tae-ho was a great help to him in all his decisions. During the investigation, we discover that Tae-ho cannot remember what happened due to the drugs In-ju put in his drink. He has no supporting evidence in his favor. 2. We further find that on top of the drugs, he was also injected with methamphetamine, another drug. Elsewhere, we find that Tae-ho has been accused of embezzlement by the media even when the chairman clearly directed In-ha to remain quiet about the entire fiasco to the media. In-ha maintains that the media reports were unexpected, but the chairman tells him to sort this mess out soon. Meanwhile, Seo-won plans to leave Korea by acquiring a fake passport as he doesn't want to get involved with Tae-ho. On the other hand, Haewon confronts In-ha about Tae-ho's position, but In-ha brushes it off. He maintains that In-ju was still his family that Tae-ho killed. He doesn't seem to doubt that Tae-ho actually killed In-ju. Unlike Haewon, his behavior is quite changed with Haewon as well. During the court proceedings, Mo Jae-jun testifies against Tae-ho, putting him further at a disadvantage. Being the secretary of In-ju, he gives the statement that Tae-ho was seen going into the apartment with In-ju under the influence of drugs. Also, he mentions the previous meeting with Tae-ho, where he threatened Mo Jae-jun about taking revenge on In-ju. Depending upon all this evidence, Tae-ho is sentenced to life imprisonment. In the prison, In-ha comes to meet Tae-ho and blames him for everything that happened. While Tae-ho is going back to his cell, he is shocked that In-ha did not ask him the reason for killing In-ju. His behavior was changed and he was not looking like a friend this time. Elsewhere, the chairman orders Chu Hyuk-jin to investigate the reason behind In-ju's death. While on his exercise break in the prison, Tae-ho faints. While fainting, he begins remembering the fateful day of In-ju's death. He remembers that there was another person besides Tae-ho, In-ju and In-ju's mistress. Tae-ho was still confused about whether he really killed In-ju under the influence of drugs that night or not. Tae-ho wakes up at the infirmary and the doctor helps him. It seems she had a grudge against In-ju and she let Tae-ho use the phone at the infirmary to call Haewon. Tae-ho tells Haewon about the other person who was with them at that night and he also discusses the next plan with her. Just then a guard comes there to take Tae-ho and he has seen him on the phone. But he is not going to tell anyone about this because he needs money from Tae-ho. The next day, In-ha took over the position of Tae-ho in the Future Strategy Office. Elsewhere, Haewon appears at Seo-won's cafe. She relays Tae-ho's threats to Seo-won, who is reluctant to help him. She now asks him to help Tae-ho as he needs him the most at that time. At night, Haewon is talking to Tae-ho when In-ha appears and hugs her. It's clear that Haewon does not love In-ha and is now uncomfortable around him. Back at the prison, Seo-won visits Tae-ho, disguised as his lawyer. He wants to get out of all this fuss, but Tae-ho knows about all the secrets of Seo-won, so he threatens him to leak all those secrets if he refuses to help. Tae-ho asks him to investigate Mo Jae-jun, who is the starting point of the entire mystery. Elsewhere, In-ha receives a call from Mo Jae-jun and they seem to be close. Later, we see In-ha at Tae-ho and Haewon's secret meeting place, where they kissed each other earlier. It's clear that he knows about Tae-ho and Haewon's relationship. The scene shifts to a flashback with In-ju offering Tae-ho drugs. The three, In-ju, Tae-ho, and In-ju's mistress, then go somewhere, and Tae-ho notices the driver briefly. Back at the chairman's office, we discover that Mo Jae-jun is the son of a woman who worked for the Kang Villa, the villa where Kang In-ha was living when he met Tae-ho. The woman died in an accident, but Mo Jae-jun went to school with In-ha and later became In-ju's secretary. Shu Hyuk-jin also reasons that if Tae-ho wanted revenge, he would make In-ju a complete loser instead of killing him. This means that In-ha is actually the person behind In-ju's death, using Mo Jae-jun for his evil purposes. Elsewhere, Seo-won tracks Jae-jun and decides to check on him himself. When he goes to see the apartment, he meets In-ha along the way, who goes inside one of the apartments. Later, Seo-won explains to Tae-ho that Jae-jun has been living with In-ha since his mother died. They lived together for 7 years. Tae-ho is shocked to realize that In-ha has not been his friend. The call that In-ha received from Jae-jun was from Seo-won, who wanted to check for sure if In-ha was involved with Jae-jun. In-ha has been deceiving Tae-ho for all these years. The court scene takes place again where Tae-ho was sentenced to capital punishment. Tae-ho continues crying that he is innocent but no one hears him. After that, In-ha informs the chairman about Tae-ho's punishment, who appears distressed at the news. Tae-ho is moved to a new prison. There, he meets the moneylender boss Tak and his group, who were chasing after Haiwon during their university days. Back at Kango Group's office, a Kango Group lawyer explains to In-Ha that Tae-Ho might get a reduced sentence based on mental instability at the time of the crime. However, In-Ha expresses that he wants Tae-Ho dead. It's further revealed that In-Ha was actually the person following Tae-Ho and Haiwon and clicking their pictures. He has seen Tae-Ho and Haiwon intimate moments. Now, while standing in the bathroom, he forces himself on Haiwon. When she rejects his advances, In-Ha chokes her and explains that he only chose Haiwon because Tae-Ho was interested in her. Apparently, Haiwon knew that In-Ha had found out about her and Tae-Ho as she saw him standing in her and Tae-Ho's meeting place. Now, her life is miserable because she is strangled at the house of In-Ha, who treats her like an object. The following day, Haiwon goes to meet Tae-Ho in the prison. She doesn't tell him about In-Ha and wants his advice on getting the chairman's approval for her to work again. Tae-Ho suggests she directly tell the chairman that she wants to work for the Kang-ho Art Foundation, where Ji-Suk managed her slush funds. Haiwon does exactly that and gets permission to do the work. Meanwhile, Tae-Ho asks Tak to arrange for a mobile phone. Tak shows him his hidden stash of luxuries in the prison, and Tae-Ho strikes up a deal with him. Elsewhere, the chairman calls In-Ha and asks him to visit his home for dinner with Haiwon. In the prison, Tae-Ho is able to secure the mobile, but before he can use it, he is called for a visitor. It's his mother dressed as a monk who has come to meet him after so many years when she heard about his imprisonment. But Tae-Ho refuses to talk to her and walks back. Suddenly something comes up in his mind and he rushes back to the visitor's area but finds out that his mother has already left die-hearted of her son. At night, Tae-Ho watches a prison guard's eyes and realizes that the driver wasn't Mo Ji-Jun and asks Tak's help. Tae-Ho calls Sun-woo and tells him that Mo Ji-Jun was not the driver at that night, it was someone else. He asks Si-In-Won to find the driver who is the evidence that Ji-Jun killed In-ju. The following day, Si-In-Won meets someone who can give him information on Ji-Jun. The man tells him about Roy, who is loyal to Ji-Jun. Si-In-Won and his companions track Roy, who somehow escapes to Ji-Jun's club after seeing men chasing him, but unfortunately, Ji-Jun swiftly kills him at his club for compromising his location. Just then, In-Ha appears there and proposes to kill Tae-Ho, too. In the meantime, Haiwon visits Tae-Ho in the prison and asks for his help. She, now, wants to won Kang-No. She shows the scar on her neck which are due to the assault attack of In-Ha on her. Seeing this, Tae-Ho vows to make her the heir of Kango Group. At the Kang residence, the chairman makes Haiwon the director of Kang-O's Art Foundation much to the dislike of the family. All the family members start questioning on this decision and doesn't want Haiwon to get this post, but the chairman doesn't back from his stance. Later, Ji-Jun calls a prison guard in In-Ha's presence. It's clear that they are going to kill Tae-Ho. A guard comes to wake Tae-Ho from his cell, saying that he has a visitor. Tae-Ho leaves the cell after hearing this, and Tak notices his absence. Meanwhile, In-Ha visits Si-In-Won's restaurant and recognizes him as someone working for Tae-Ho. Also, Si-In-Won's Italian aide has switched sides with In-Ha's over money. He now holds Si-In-Won hostage as he searches for Tae-Ho, who has gone missing from the prison cell. A bit later, we find the assassin sent to finish Tae-Ho, apologizing to Mo Ji-Jun with In-Ha at the back of the car since Tae-Ho went missing before he could kill him. Still, they give the assassin money to disappear. Meanwhile, Haiwon learns about Tae-Ho's disappearance and immediately goes to see Si-In-Won, who is nowhere to be found as the Italian man is keeping him under his eye while holding a gun at his head. Fortunately, Si-In-Won overpowers his Italian aide and comments about half the money that In-Ha would give him being his, since Si-In-Won believes in trusting money rather than people, meaning he has switched sides as well. The Kang family are deliberating about Tae-Ho's disappearance and we find that Gum-Suk is trying to take over Kang-ho as she is planning something big with Sun-ju. On the other hand, Hui-ju is worried about Tae-Ho and asks someone to find him. Meanwhile, Haiwon receives a call from her mother demanding money which she gives her, but Haiwon strikes up a deal to give her twice more money if her mother can bring someone to help Haiwon find a person. Her mother plays a double game and tells In-Ha about her daughter's request. Meanwhile, Tae-Ho is beginning to remember the fourth person who actually killed In-ju. It's In-Ha coming into his dreams who was present there at night when Tae-Ho was with In-ju under the influence of drugs. He wakes up to find that the chairman got him out of the prison. The chairman tells him that Tae-Ho was going to get killed in prison. The next day, Haiwon's mother brings her to meet someone, and it turns out that the person is Mo Ji-Jun, who abducts her on the instructions of In-Ha. Then, In-Ha prisons Haiwon in a psychiatric ward. Back at the chairman's office, it turns out that In-Ha has partnered with Park Seo-jin, the chairman's rival, to break the Kango Group into two and then discard Park Seo-jin. The blueprint of the plan was made by Tae-Ho, and the chairman is aware of Tae-Ho and In-Ha's relationship. The chairman offers Tae-Ho his position at the Kango Group if he stops In-Ha. Tae-Ho is also suspicious that it might be In-Ha who killed In-ju. Meanwhile, Tae-Ho tries to contact Haiwon but to no avail. The chairman tells him that In-Ha has her imprisoned in the psychiatric ward. Elsewhere, In-Ha gets Haiwon out, on the condition that she is to become his companion and live only for him. Later, Tae-Ho explains the plan to the chairman. He suggests that the chairman divide the Kango Group and approach Park Seo-jin first before In-ha. Since it was their fathers who built the Kango Group in partnership, Park Seo-jin would have attacked Kang-ho anyway for half of it. It was only a matter of time. Tae-Ho assures that Seo-jin is only a pawn in the game and that the core of Kang-ho will remain with the chairman. He further tells the chairman to make sure that Haiwon is on their side because In-ha wants Haiwon's help in accessing the slush fund money of Kang-ho Art Foundation, which Haiwon is a director of, to carry out his plan. Likewise, the chairman gets Haiwon on his side on the condition that he will not stop her from doing anything. Meanwhile, Seo-won is checking all the CCTV footages of the prison and figures out that chairman helped Tae-Ho escaping from the prison. One night, In-ha accidentally oversees the doctor going into the chairman's office secretly. The doctor is visiting Tae-Ho to check his health. In-ha follows him, but the doctor signals with a fall so that Tae-Ho gets an alert. Immediately, the chairman also comes out to meet the doctor. Still, In-ha has started doubting that Tae-Ho was with the chairman. After that, Tae-Ho leaves the office and the chairman meets with Park Seo-jin and proposes the divide of Kango Group. Park Seo-jin is reluctant at first, because he only needed In-ha's Kang surname, but chairman tells him that In-ha will be ousted from the company. Elsewhere, Haiwon devises a plan to take Tae-Ho into the hotel room where In-ju was killed. Tae-Ho inspects the place there and starts remembering the night. Although fuzzy, he remembers about the phone that In-ju's mistress was recording them that night. Meanwhile, In-ha comes to talk to the chairman, who reveals his plans to oust In-ha from the bloodline. He is angry at him for killing In-ju and then blaming Tae-Ho for the murder. In-ha tries to convince the chairman again as he is his son, but the chairman's heart conditions worsen. As a result, In-ha leaves the chairman to die as the chairman gets a heart attack. Meanwhile, Hui-ju is informed that Tae-Ho was with the chairman, so she goes to the chairman's office to find Tae-Ho. But she finds the chairman unconscious in the bathtub instead. She gets him rushed to the hospital. The Kang family arrive at the hospital, where they are told that the chairman's condition is serious. Meanwhile, Tae-Ho visits the chairman's office, and it seems that he is getting ready with a plan. In-ha realizes that there might be a secret room in the chairman's office and will visit to check it. He does find the room and concludes that Tae-Ho was here at the night when he followed the doctor. At the same time, Tae-Ho visits prosecutor and explains about the mobile phone evidence which must has the recordings from that night. He promises to get the prosecutor back to his city if he helps him in this matter because the phone is at the police station in the evidence box. Prosecutor reluctantly agrees to help Tae-Ho but handcuffs him in the car so that he can arrest Tae-Ho if he comes out wrong. Meanwhile, Seo-won has seen the two together, but he decides to help Tae-Ho and doesn't inform In-ha. He even deletes the CCTV footage capturing Tae-Ho on the road. Then, the prosecutor steals the mobile phone but finds nothing in the photo and video section. He gives the phone to Tae-Ho, who opens the secret folder to find all the evidence there. In-ha can be seen in the video killing both In-ju and his wife. While at that time, Tae-Ho was under the influence of drugs. The prosecutor takes the evidence to the district attorney who allows him to reopen the case. After that, Tae-Ho turns himself to the police as the prosecutors arrest Mo Gi-jun. Tae-Ho decides to go for Gi-jun first and keep In-ha as an accomplice a secret for now. Also, Chu Hyuk-jin becomes Tae-Ho's lawyer on the order of the chairman, who wants to help Tae-Ho. Meanwhile, In-ha is trying to get Park Seo-jin back to his side, but Seo-jin comments that the moment the chairman wakes up, In-ha is out of the game, so he doesn't come with In-ha. Meanwhile, Haiwon leaves In-ha's house after leaving her wedding ring back, meaning that she doesn't want to live with In-ha anymore. At the police station, Mo Gi-jun happily takes all the blame for the murders in the investigation, but he doesn't reveal anything about In-ha. On the other hand, Kwon-suk is now on a roll. She's planning to make Song-ju the CEO of the group, and for that reason, she is meeting all the shareholders in the Kango Group. At the prison, Tae-Ho tells boss Tak about a paper company Gold H Investment. Tae-Ho made the company to make In-ha the chairman, which In-ha isn't aware of as well. Tae-Ho asks if Tak is interested in real gambling as he needs him in his plan of taking over the Kango Group. After some days, Tak is released from prison, and Haiwon visits him, suggesting that Tak is to disguise himself as Gold H Investments founder, Michael Chong. Seo-won also joined them on this mission. It's revealed in a flashback that as soon as Mo Gi-jun was arrested, Seo-won suggested the Gold H investment plan to Tae-Ho. In the meantime, Sung-ju briefs Ji-suk about Gold H Investment's share in the Kango Group. The shares are pretty high and concerning, even for In-ha. Meanwhile, Tae-Ho is declared innocent by the court after viewing all the evidence of that night in the form of videos. Elsewhere, In-ha is bothered by his father's existence, and so he decides to kill him. Just when In-ha is about to take off the chairman's oxygen mask, Tae-Ho arrives and stops him. Later, at the rooftop, Tae-Ho confronts In-ha about his actions, but In-ha proclaims that he isn't the old In-ha that Tae-ho knew. The two then proceed to threaten each other before Tae-ho leaves. Meanwhile, Mo Ji-jun is patiently waiting to hear from In-ha in the prison. A prison guard calls him and takes him to the meeting room where In-ha's call is waiting for him. In-ha apologizes to him for the delay, and Ji-jun offers to take all the blame but expresses that it won't be long before he gets a death sentence and that he's scared. Just after that, the prison guard murders Ji-jun on In-ha's command, where he throws a toothbrush to indicate that the murder was done by a fellow prisoner. In-ha is really an evil person. He even ordered the killing of his childhood friend. Meanwhile, Tae-ho and his team are working on their move regarding Gold H investment. It's revealed that the chairman knew about the paper company founded by Tae-ho, and Tae-ho expressed that the company would protect Kang-O's shares from hostile parties that might attack the chairman. Among all this, Song-ju sends an email to Sina-won, saying that he wants to meet Michael Chang, who is actually boss Tak. In the meantime, Hui-ju meets with In-ju's wife, and Hui-ju emphasizes that she should use her shares to support the Kang family and not the other way around. Meanwhile, Ji-suk and Song-ju are discussing Gold H investment and how important it is for them to get their shares on Song-ju's side. On the other hand, In-ha tells Park Sa-jin about the new development regarding Gold H investment and conveys that this company might pose a threat to Sa-jin's holdings. Sa-jin is displeased with the news and reiterates that he can leave In-ha's side if In-ha isn't useful. It indicates that Sa-jin is still dealing with In-ha even after making a deal with the chairman. The following day, Gold H Investment invited Ji-suk, Song-ju, and In-ha to a meeting. As they wait for Michael Chang, Tae-ho appears instead. He introduces himself as Gold H Investment's co-CEO, much to everyone's surprise. Later, In-ha approaches Tae-ho in the basement and threatens him once again. Later that day, In-ju's wife meets In-ha and proposes collaboration with him, unaware that it was In-ha who killed his own brother. On the other hand, Ji-suk invites In-ha for dinner at the Kang residence. When In-ha arrives, Tae-ho is already seated, highlighting that the three, Ji-suk, Song-ju and Tae-ho, are in cahoots with each other. In-ha gets displeased seeing Tae-ho already there and leaves the dinner without saying anything. In the next scene, we witness a flashback where Tae-ho tells In-ha that his mother was killed by his stepfather. Back in the present, In-ha contacts the prison commissioner and asks him to release Tae-ho's stepfather. Tae-ho's stepfather is temporarily released, along with the location of Tae-ho's mother on the phone, and he straight away visits the temple where his mother is disguised as a monk. As he asks her to come with him, she trips on the stairs and dies. Meanwhile, Ji-suk asks Song-ju to hold a press conference. While on their way to the venue of the press conference, Ji-suk and Ji-suk's secretary are faced with charges of disposing of a corpse and embezzlement from the prosecutors. While Ji-suk is forcibly taken by the police, she asks Song-ju to attend the conference, but he decides to be with his mother. It's revealed later that In-ha provided the evidence for the hit-and-run case and embezzlement to the police. Later on, we see that Kang In-ju was involved in the hit-and-run case, and the mother helped in covering it. Now, it is In-ha who addresses the conference and declares himself the acting chairman. Elsewhere, Sina-won shows Tae-ho a picture of his stepfather outside the prison. He then finds that his mother is dead, which makes Tae-ho very sad. At the same time, Hui-ju confronts In-ha about his actions, especially against her mother, and leaves, saying that In-ha has changed. Then, we see that Chae Dong-uk can finally take his revenge against Song-ju. Not only does he ghost Song-ju, but he also turns Song-ju's aide, the congressman, against him. After that, In-ha visits Song-ju, only to get punched by Song-ju. We later find that Park Sa-jin, the congressman, Chae Dong-uk, and In-ha are all working together, and In-ha has become the acting chairman. The following day, Song-ju visits Tae-ho's mother's funeral, emphasizing that they need to work together against a common enemy who is In-ha. Later, we see Tae-ho in the columbarium, reminiscing about his mother. Haewon decides to pay her respects and comforts Tae-ho, emphasizing that he needs to keep going. Tae-ho then goes back to the first home he bought in the town where he first met In-ha. He remembers about his journey, meeting In-ha and planning to take Kang-ho down. Back at his city house, he tears all the pictures off of his window, signifying the end of his lifelong mission to make In-ha the heir. On the other hand, Song-ju relays to his mother in prison that he doesn't want to live her dream anymore and that he has always been miserable. Ji-suk first reacts with anger but then understands his agony and extends her support. In the next scene, Park Sa-jin's daughter is revealed to be the doctor who helped Tae-ho in prison. She tells his father about how In-ju tormented her and that it was impossible for her to survive without drugging herself. The next day, In-ha reaches work as the acting chairman. There's an emergency stakeholder meeting with the agenda to make In-ha the chairman, but as he gets out of the elevator, he sees the prosecution arrest him for the murder of In-ju and Ji-jun. Tae-ho is behind the arrest as he has now shown the complete video evidence to the police. After that, Kang In-ha's arrest reaches the meeting, the scene changes, and Park Sa-jin's daughter calls Tae-ho to tell him that her father wants to see Tae-ho. He is able to convince Sa-jin not to have Kang-ho's energy in exchange for one share. At the same time, In-ha is taken for questioning, where we find that Mo Ji-Jun is actually alive. In a flashback, we find that the prison doctor, also Park Seo-jin's daughter, found him right after he was attacked since Tae-Ho predicted it. Later, Tae-Ho visited Ji-Jun to tell him the truth about In-Ha. It's assumed that Ji-Jun will testify against In-Ha this time. Back at the Kango office, the audit team conducts a raid on In-Ha's department. Also, the chairman seems to be struggling to stay alive in the hospital, but there are a lot of doctors tending to him. In the prison, In-Ha receives a letter from the chairman where his surname is changed from Kang to Baek, so he finally is out of the bloodline of the chairman. The following day, Hui-ju asks Tae-Ho to visit the Kang residence, where Tae-Ho finds the chairman in a wheelchair. Thankfully, he is still alive. The scene changes, and In-Ha is sentenced to life imprisonment for his crimes. Tae-Ho later meets In-Ha in prison and asks him why In-Ha framed Tae-Ho. In-Ha replies that he cannot remember anymore. Tae-Ho leaves In-Ha with a picture of the three, Tae-Ho, In-Ha and Haewon. From now on, Hui-ju and Song-ju have a good relationship, and Hui-ju leaves for a long trip. Tae-Ho meets Haewon, and they briefly discuss In-Ha. Now, they are back together after all the hardships. Later, we find that In-Ha had hanged himself. We jump to 3 years later where Chairman's ambitious citywide project has been completed. Haewon is working with the congressman again. Song-ju is in charge of Co-Prosperity Cooperation Center and Tae-Ho has become the chairman of Kango. In a flashback, we see the chairman acknowledging Tae-Ho's efforts to save Kango and makes him the chairman. Back to the present, Hui-ju is in Mexico and Sian-Won and Boss-Tak are enjoying their vacation sponsored by Tae-Ho as a gift. The episode ends with Tae-Ho's dream coming true, and he says, "I'm still dreaming for myself."